But I think that we have to realize, like, and then if my mentality is that sex equals stress relief, because for some men, and I think a lot of men, they really fall into this where it's sex becomes a place of stress relief. Well, you're actually putting fear and stress into your wife physically.
Which
That's awful.
I don't know about all women, but for me, it's like, no, it's not. If I'm stressed, like that's the last thing I want to do. So
Exactly.
now there's a huge mismatch.
Yeah.
And what do you, what are you going to do with that?
Well, you're going to have a fight. I mean, that's probably what's going to happen. Remember that your sexual life is the highest level of communication.
Welcome back to Marriage Sparks. We're going to wrap up this week, and we left off talking about being receptive to your spouse, and really celebrating the sacrament of marriage, encountering your spouse's love, is a way to really reflect God's love.
Yeah.
Are we reflecting God's love, and are we letting our spouse love us how we should be letting God love us, really?
Hmm.
Being receptive to God's love was something we talked about last week. So I thought I'd jump in here first because traditionally we think of, I should say biologically, really, if you think about like theology of the body, my kids laugh because I'm always bringing up theology of the body whenever I can. But good, sneak it in whenever you can. But really, I see my role as a woman as being receptive. Our bodies reflect that. We receive physically our husband's bodies, and they give. So how can I be more receptive, both spiritually, physically, emotionally, to my husband? And sometimes it's easier and sometimes it's harder. And obviously God's love too, but we're going to focus on, I think, the married love. How can I be receptive to my husband loving me? Assuming, like Dan said, everybody, even if they do it really poorly, they're probably doing their best. So I'm going to assume that my husband wants to love me, that he's trying to love me. And how can I receive that? And it would be wrong to not receive that, to not receive that love. Whether it's, he's trying to, how awful would that be if he tries to do all these things, to show me he loves me. And it's like, no, rebuffed again.
Yeah.
So am I being receptive? That's a good place to start.
Well, I think I think that's a good place to start. I mean, if you're a guy though, the other thing is like we also have to be receptive. And that's, I think, even more weird for us because our bodies are not like physiologically built for receptivity. They're externalized. So it's very hard for us. We really have to focus on relaxation. Men have to work on relaxation. I think in my
Okay.
experience, because they are always about go, 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 initiate, initiate, initiate. So whether it's initiate a conversation, invite a woman on a date, start a business, do this thing, tear down their garage, which I
Are you going to
probably
do
should.
that?
No, I'm not doing that. I did that once. I'm not doing that again.
Oh, yeah, the tree fall
No.
was the wrong way. We really were praying for that tree to fall the other way.
That's not our prayer request on
No,
this
it's
podcast.
not.
But yeah. But I'm just saying, like, as a man, like, I have to be able to surrender this need to constantly, like, go out and do things. I have to first relax so that when I come to my wife or try to love my wife, it is not from this place of intensity or control or fear. Because I think a lot of us as men, that is one of the biggest problems I see clinically is that men and women, but men are the head of the home and we are the weathermen so far as that we produce the climate of the home. Is that if I'm not at peace or I can't relax, that's why that Sabbath thing is so important. If I touch my wife, if I talk to my wife, if I'm going to be around my wife or my kids, am I relaxed? Because for her to be receptive, she can't be having this intensity of fear. She can't be this place, this dumping ground for all of my anger, all of my stress. That's not really what you want to give to your wife. I think a lot of times you're like, well, my wife needs to hear this. No, like that, you got to think about that. Do you really want your wife to be the place, the dumping ground for all of the stress?
But also, too, how can I be more receptive? Well, if I've constantly, I don't know one woman who doesn't have a constant running list of things to do.
Yeah.
And all my tabs, literally my tabs are open on my computer, but in my brain. It drives me crazy. I have like 10,000 unread emails. It's great.
Stressing me out.
I know, along with the gas tank, but it's okay. It is now full
That-
because he filled it. He literally filled my tank.
oh,
My love
yeah.
tank and my gas tank. So anyways, but I sometimes have to actually, it's a prayer I've said, like, Lord, help me turn off my brain right now and just be present for my spouse. Tell me, be present for him right now. Because I think we think if it doesn't come naturally to us, if I can't just want to listen or, I'll do it when I'm available, or I'll do it when I have free time, or I just have to get this one last thing done. That it's
Yeah.
not good. But no, sometimes we just have to ask God for help and be very intentional about, I'm done. The days are, I again didn't mop the floor today. Didn't, you know, Did you know there are two kinds of desire in marriage? One just shows up, the other has to be built. Most couples only wait for spontaneous desire, the kind that feels automatic. But over time, that one fades and fluctuates. Responsive desire is different. It grows from closeness, from touch, from emotional safety, from friendship. And when you understand the difference, everything changes. We created a free guide called Into Me You See, a couple's guide to true intimacy, to help you rebuild trust, lower pressure around sex, and develop desire in a healthy, natural way. If you want deeper emotional and physical connection, download it now. It's free. Click the link in show notes or go to heartsrenewed.org and start tonight. Do these things yet? Or, hey, let me just jot this down and make a list for tomorrow. And then, you know what I mean? And then I can
Sure.
be there for you. So maybe that's a, I'm going to do it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, like, there has to be a way to kind of, realize what is going on in ourselves, right? And figuring out, like, maybe where it is that we get blocked to be receptive or what prohibits me from being present. I think, like, for me as a man, like, I think one of the big things is really to think from my wife's perspective, right? To think about specifically, like, well, what is that she's going through? And a lot of times I don't even think we ask our wives, like, in a relaxed way where they even believe that we want their feedback, right? It's like, "Well, what do you want me to do? I don't wanna do it." Well, I mean, like, that's not really asking for anything. That's why I mean, like, I think you have to be relaxed, but then you have to slay the ego enough to figure out, well, this woman has done all of these things that I know of today. So, in general, like, what is probably, like, what it is that she actually needs? And to try to, again, like, when we think about love, love is really, like, I really want to elevate that other person above myself. And sometimes it's very hard. So I think sometimes if your life is disordered, right? And when I say disordered, I mean that God is not at the center. You're not having rest. You're not being able to connect to what is the priority. It's very hard to love. And then there's a lot of pressure that comes into your physical life. Like, to be present with your spouse is hard. To be able to connect to your spouse physically, sexually becomes hard, becomes a place
Well, if
of
you say I
stress.
never have time for that, well, how can you make time? Because when we talk about as
Yeah.
sacramental life, that's part of it. Your marriage is a sacrament,
Yeah.
and being intimate with your spouse needs to be a priority. It just does. And I'm not saying I always, I'm 100% on board. You're always 100%
True.
ready. But we both recognize that's important. So, and then how can we work toward that?
Yeah, and I really do think, like, the more that the focus is on on God, and then the other person, to try to reduce the amount of again, like, the amount of stress, and to relax one another, like, it's more, I think we're more receptive. We can't receive information. I can't pay attention to my wife if I'm upset. So, like, if I come home and I physically move really fast and I scurry over to my desk and I have to check emails and she's made dinner and I'm like, "Hold on, I've gotta go respond to this one more email." Like, you're gonna
That
be
doesn't
upset.
make me want to jump into bed with you either. So,
No, well, let's just get through dinner with the kids.
it's
But I'm
like,
just saying, like, but I think that we have to
yeah.
realize, like, and then if my mentality is that sex equals stress relief, because for some men, and I think a lot of men, they really fall into this where it's sex becomes a place of stress relief. Well, you're actually putting fear and stress into your wife physically.
Which
That's awful.
I don't know about all women, but for me, it's like, no, it's not. If I'm stressed, like that's the last thing I want to do. So now
Exactly.
there's a huge mismatch.
Yeah.
And what do what are you gonna do with that?
Well, you're gonna have a fight. I mean, that's probably what's gonna happen. And so I think, for those listening, I think, remember that, like, yeah, your sexual life is the highest level of communication, but communication breaks down if you're stressed. And so we want to reduce the stress by figuring out what's important. You can't do that if you don't have a Sabbath. You can't do that if you're not putting yourself in a position where you can respond to God in your life, respond to the needs of your children and your wife or your husband in your life. because now all of a sudden everything's just coming at you. Everything is just, and then you have to go out and just do stuff. But then you're tired, and then your life is just an endless list of things. And your wife has an endless list of things in her mind, and you feel like you have an endless list of tasks that really, like, I only usually I max out at like 13 things, but we know your mind is literally like an endless stream to infinity of things that are going to need to be done. But we really have to slow things down so that we can relax and enjoy our marriage. And again, like, remember, outside of the Eucharist, like, so the Eucharist is the summit of the Catholic life, but then after the Eucharist, the second most powerful sacrament is reserved in marriage for sex. It's the Eucharist, then sex, because marriage is the primordial sacrament. A lot of times people think it's in a different order, but that's why the devil goes after, if you look at our world, sexuality and the Eucharist, because those two things disorder the priesthood. They can disorder everything else. But marriage is the primordial sacrament. It exists even before the fall. So I think we really want to be able to check, like, is my life ordered that I can be available to my husband, to my wife? Can I respond to what their needs are? Because they have needs other than sexual needs. And I think that people have, again, if you cannot,
If you can't do that, you can't do the other thing either. So,
yeah.
yeah.
And if you do, it's going to be stressful, and it's going to have problems because there's fear there, and you're not connecting with each other, the way that you need to, because we want each other to merge in a sense where we're connecting. And when we come together in terms of a sexual, physical, marital act, that it should relax both of us even more. And you should have a greater knowledge of yourself and how much you're loved. It shouldn't be like, oh, am I loved? Oh, how was it? Because then now people go, well, was this okay? Was this okay? Was this person like, versus, did you feel loved? So, I know we get close to Valentine's Day, so we're going to talk more about sex because that's what the people want, right?
They want to
They
talk
want
about
to
sex.
talk about sex. Like,
Alright.
well, that's what. So stay tuned and keep us in your prayers if any of these things have been helpful.
This comes out probably a couple days before Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, well, so stay tuned. We do have a free download called Intimacy You See, like, which is a free download for couples for sex and intimacy. So if you haven't already downloaded it and you want to try it, take a look at it. It's I think, a very powerful thing, and it'll break down the two factors really that people with a high level of sexual fulfillment after decades have in common. So take a look at that. Get a copy of that. Do that with your spouse, because you really should enjoy your marriage. God wants joyful marriage. He wants people to have an adventure. It shouldn't be roommates that are trying to get through the next month until their kids are off to college and then they can have their life. So pray for us. We will pray for you. And then again, we'll be back soon. Take care.